Her name was Margaret Bernice. The thing I remember when I think about it is she had really soft cheeks. I just remember rubbing her cheeks, and she just had dark hair, and it was curly and soft.
Welcome to Still a Part of Us, a podcast where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Lee Red, and on this episode, Dustin is telling the story of his daughter, Margaret, who was stillborn at 37 weeks. As a word of caution to our listeners, this story contains emotional triggers of stillbirth and infant loss. Please keep yourself emotionally and mentally healthy and seek help if needed. Also be aware that these birth stories may differ from his or her partners, as these accounts are told from their own perspective through the lens of trauma, heartache, and the passage of time. Please respect our moms and dads who are brave and gracious to share their children with us. This is Lee, and I'm speaking with Dustin about his daughter. So tell me a little about yourself.
Well, I'm a teacher. I teach high school English. And last school year, same calendar year, I was a teacher at the same school. Last year, I was getting my master's. I was going into library media.
Oh, man.
So that was a significant thing.
You like to punish yourself, it seems like. First of all, you're a high school teacher, and then you're going into library media and getting a master's.
Yeah, I want to be still down the road a school librarian. So that's what I was doing. And Emily got pregnant along the way while I was getting my master's. So that was at the beginning of the school year. So that was that was last year. I was going to finish up my master's right as Maggie was supposed to be born. You know, all those things are going to kind of line up perfectly. And so that was what was going on last year. And I'm back at school now. I have my master's. But
were you able to?
We lost Maggie. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, were you able to take a little bit of a sabbatical with with what all that happened?
She May 9th was when I found out she didn't have a heartbeat, and she was born on May 10th. And we took a week off, and actually after a week off, we went back to work. I actually work with my wife, and I don't know, a lot of people advise us not to go back to work. When we would tell people, they would think that was just, I don't know, how are you going to do that? I definitely think that we would not have been as eager to get back to work, or not that we were eager, that's not the right word, but it was definitely helpful that we worked together. I think that Emily definitely would have had a really hard time going to work, and I would have as well. So it was nice that we were able to go. And summer break was coming up because it was May. Mm-hmm. So we went back, we took a week off, and then went back to work. And nobody really expected much out of us, I will say, in the last few weeks. We kind of kept to ourselves, and Emily would send me her students sometimes, and I kind of put on movies. I was a bad teacher for the last few weeks of school.
Wow.
So
nobody, like you said, nobody's going to blame you, and nobody's expecting much.
Yeah, and the students were great. I mean, they didn't bug us, or they were pretty decent to us. And so yeah, and then we had the summer, so we had about 10 weeks. I don't know exactly what it came out to be off of work. And got to travel a little bit. We took a few trips for some different things, and so yeah, we did get some time.
Well, that's good. It sort of seems like we started at the end. Should we start at the beginning? When you guys live in South Carolina.
Yeah.
Have you always lived in South Carolina?
No, I'm from Indiana, and Emily, my wife, is from Michigan.
And you met in the middle
And
in South Carolina.
yeah, so we did not know each other when we moved down here. I've been down here for, gosh, this is my 7th year teaching. So I've been here 6 years, and she moved down about a year before me. And we met after my first year of teaching. I took a class with a coworker of ours now, and she recommended that we start talking, and we did, and then we ended up getting married. And we're married for about 2 years, and then started trying to get pregnant, and got pregnant. She was pregnant. I don't know the exact date. This is one thing that's different between me and her. She knows all the exact details, and I feel like my memory is like broad strokes of like when things happen. So
if you get the year, it's good enough, I think.
Yeah. So fall 2018, we got pregnant.
And was it a easy pregnancy for your wife? Was there anything like she really craved that you're just like, oh my goodness, I can't believe? Like with our first pregnancy, my wife was craving steaks, and it was amazing because she'd only eat about 3 bites of a steak, and all of a sudden I had 1.5 steaks that I was wolfing down. And then with our son, she literally craved pickles, and I just thought that was a trope. That was a cartoon trope. But was there anything that really caught your attention about the pregnancy?
Well, to answer your first question, it was a pretty easy pregnancy. I mean, I only remember her ever getting really like sick in the morning once. She would be tired, a lot. She'd say she's very tired, and I remember sometimes I would say, "Yeah, I'm really tired too," and oh, it's not the same, which it wasn't. But overall, she felt good. She was able to run. She ran until like maybe up to 30 weeks. I think she was running, and not running a ton. Like she had started out, I think she wanted to run a half marathon, maybe was what she was trying to do. And that changed.
Mm-hmm.
But she was able to run walk, and she was doing yoga. And like I said, so I remember her getting sick once, maybe, where I think she threw up one morning early on. But the doctors, every time we went, everything was always looking great, and they always called her the perfect patient. And I mean, we were just excited. There weren't any, it was just good. We were excited. Everybody was excited. Our families were excited. As far as her craving things, I don't remember anything really in particular. Junk food in general, I remember she wanted to eat, but we like a certain kind of ice cream. It's like the Publix brand Brownie Moose Tracks.
Oh yeah.
And I do remember a couple of instances where I'd run to the store and they didn't have it once, and I would always ask them to go look in the back, and I'd totally throw under the bus. Like, my pregnant wife, she won't let me come home if I don't get this, or, I don't know.
You don't understand. I need this.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I remember a couple times once they didn't find it and I had to get something else. And she accepted it, but I think they were like out of it for a few weeks, and then I went once and they did have it. And so I bought like 2 or 3 tubs to just be ready.
Everyone, yeah, you have to have one in the back of the fridge in the freezer.
Yeah. So that's the only thing I remember that she specifically craved. But it was a good pregnancy. I mean, until the end, everything was good. Until it wasn't anymore. Pretty much. Wasn't.
Would you like to start on when it turned from good to when it didn't turn good?
Yeah. So the day that we found out that Maggie did not have a heartbeat, like I said, I was getting my master's for library media, and up to that day, I'd gone to every doctor's appointment with her, except for one. She had a friend that had flown down or come down. I think she flew, from Michigan. And so that one time, this was before all this happened, her friend went with her, but I'd made it to every appointment, which was cool. And I mean, I liked going. It was fun to see the ultrasounds and to hear the heartbeat. So I enjoyed doing that. And I didn't go on this day because I was taking like the final exam. It's a praxis. If you're a teacher, you know about the praxis.
I don't know about the praxis, but I can imagine.
So I had to take a praxis for library media, And it was like, I don't know, it's a big test. It was a big thing because I still had one more class. I had to finish up like a class and take the praxis and then take one more class. But I was gonna, in one fell swoop, I was gonna take that test and hopefully pass. And I did pass. And on my way home after the test, I had a 300-hour internship I had to do. So on top of working full time. So I had my portfolio and I mailed it to my instructor on my way back. So I was like excited and very happy to have finished all of that. And I just remember being really, really excited and ready to be done with the internship. And one more class was no big deal. So I was about done with my master's. And Emily was in her doctor's appointment. So I think I texted her and let her know that I was out of my tests, and I dropped off my portfolio, before I left. And I was heading up 26 and got away from Charleston and turned onto our road to head to our neighborhood. And she called me, and the exact details of the conversation are fuzzy, but she asked me. I think I told her, "Oh, I passed my test," and was excited, and then she told me not to freak out, that she needed me to be calm, and which of course puts you on edge immediately.
Instantly, yeah.
Yeah, and she told me that the baby didn't have a heartbeat, and I just remember like not really knowing what that meant, which sounds like how would you know what that meant, but I had to ask, does that mean that she's dead? And it just seemed like unreal, and she confirmed that that's what it meant and that she needed me to come to the doctor's office. And
how far away was the doctor's office from where you lived? Was it a long drive that you just dreaded driving, or was it pretty quick?
I was about 10 minutes away from my house, and my house would be like 30 minutes from the doctor's office. So I was about 20 minutes out from going back. I did ask her, I was kind of close to home. So I asked her, should I get the hospital bags? I didn't know what the process was at all. And she said she just wanted me to come right away. And so I do remember without really looking, probably kind of recklessly, I just turned onto the first road that I came to, and I don't know the name of it. And I just did a little U-turn on that road and zipped back around and started heading her way. And she had hung up, and I don't know. It was unreal. I didn't know like what to do. I really didn't even know that stillbirths were a thing in 2019. I honestly thought that it was like if you smoked during your pregnancy or you drank or you did drugs, those are the kinds of things that I thought, not to like shame other people, but I thought she's been the perfect patient. So I was very just, how in the world is this happening? I remember feeling like I needed to call somebody, and I didn't know who, and I didn't, know whether Emily would want me to yet. So I kind of was just unsure, but I felt very like she wanted me to come to be with her, and I knew she would be devastated. And I felt like I needed to lean on somebody, but I didn't know who, and I didn't call anybody. Because who do you call? I don't know. I just didn't know what to do. So I drove, and she called me like 5 minutes later and asked where I was, and just told me to be careful again. And I don't know. So I drove to the doctor's office, and I got there, and I went into the doctor's office and went up to the desk, and I don't even remember if there was a line. I just went right up to the desk and said that my wife was here, and I think they were on the lookout for me because somebody came out of the side doors immediately and were like, "I'll take you to your wife." And they walked me back to a hallway, and Emily was there and crying, and we hugged and cried, and I don't know what we said, or I don't know, sad things. Couldn't believe it. Emily apologized. I remember she said she was so sorry. And, I didn't blame her at all. So at that time I was thinking, sorry, why are you sorry? It's not like you did anything. And then, so we had a few minutes, and I remember the doctor came in, and I'd never met her before. And I don't know, I feel like I'm telling it so like just matter of factly, but it was just such a surreal, like, I don't know, just felt like, how is this happening? It felt very unreal as it was going on.
It does feel like like when I reflect back on it, it feels like a Novocaine haze. Like
Uh-huh.
I just remember, like, even now that I think back of it, it's sort of like a third person view of the situation. Like I
Mm-hmm.
still remember, like you said, like this doesn't happen in the first world. This is, this isn't 1820s. This is,
Yeah.
we're in America. This doesn't happen to us. And
Mm-hmm.
it was like, I know, I understand what you feel and what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I think even one time early on in the pregnancy, Emily, we read a lot, and it seemed like she just read a lot of books where it would like end in stillbirth, or and I would joke that pregnancy complications were her favorite genre. Because I don't know, she'd be watching like Call the Midwife on
Oh
Netflix.
yeah,
I think that was one of the shows she would watch, and I remember asking her, like, watching one of them, like, does that still happen? And I don't remember our exact conversation, but looking back now and remembering having that conversation, it's just pretty
foreboding. Yeah.
unreal. I just was clueless. I mean, I had no idea.
When you guys
Um,
were in the office, did the medical staff tell you your options, or after you
yeah,
guys?
so the doctor came in and she like hugged both of us, and I never met her before, and I remember feeling like she was just so kind. She said this is like the worst part of her job is having to deal with this, and she just hates it for us. And she did tell us our options, and our options were to either go in tonight to the hospital and be induced and have Margaret, which I don't even know that I really understood. I don't know. It took a while to wake up to like that Emily would still have to like have the Margaret and all that, but we had to either decide, do we go in tonight or should we like have some time tonight and then go in the morning. And we both like right then just felt like, well, we're going to go in tonight. I guess we just couldn't imagine, like, how do you sit around the house and have
Yeah.
any semblance of, I don't know, normalcy. I just couldn't imagine sitting around. So we told her that we would be in, and she said that pretty much whenever we wanted to come in we could. um, she did warn us that the we would go in through ER. She said that because it was like after a certain time, that was just how you checked in.
Mm-hmm.
And she warned us that they may not be like fully briefed, that they would like make a note on it, but just sometimes things get overlooked. And so just warned us that they may unknowingly say something like, "When are you due?" or things like that.
Yeah.
And so we told her that we'd be going in, and I remember they let us go out through like a side kitchen, like a staff kitchen, so we didn't have to go through the front office, which was nice. I also felt like a part of me like we were being like hidden, which is a like I don't know, not very rational, but I just felt like they don't want us to go through the front lobby
Yeah.
with all these like pregnant people. And I don't think that was it at all. I think they wanted to save us from having to see other babies and whatnot. But I remember feeling that way as we were leaving. So
That's a very interesting, because I can't remember if we were ushered out through the side, but that's very interesting that you remember and thought like, oh, maybe we're being secreted away. That's
yeah,
that's
yeah.
interesting.
I don't think they were like rationally, but I
Yeah.
do remember thinking like wondering like, is this common practice? Is this what they do
They
with
don't
all
want
the
yeah,
situations like ours?
they don't want you guys going out there just bawling your eyes out in
Devastated.
front. Yeah.
Yeah,
Which they
but
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it makes sense too. And for us, it was good. Like I said, it's if you haven't experienced, which you have, but people
Mhm.
who haven't experienced a stillbirth, it is hard, at least for a while, to see, and even for Emily still to see other babies. And not that you would ever, she doesn't like dislike babies. It's just a reminder, a very,
Oh yes.
yeah. So
After you guys leave the office, did you guys go home or did you just
yeah, we
drive
went
around?
home. We went right home, and on the way home, we talked about we had Emily had been very insistent, and we came to this decision um, together. But we had decided that whenever we had Margaret, that it was just going to be us, um, as opposed to like family, which our family lives kind of far away. So
Yeah.
but we weren't going to call and like try and have anybody come down. I have a sister who lives in Greenville, which isn't too far. It's like 3 hours. We weren't going to have anybody come to the hospital. All the visiting was going to be after we had Margaret and come home with the baby, and then people were going to come visit. And so we talked about whether, like, how we were going to tell family, and we decided to call and tell them. At that point, I think we both just needed to tell people since we'd been together. And so we called her parents first, and I think her mom was working at the soup kitchen at her church. And I remember she just choked up whenever we told her. And I could hear it in her voice that she was sad. And I don't know, it was just sad. And called my parents next, and my parents weren't home. So and my brother answered, and I was like, do I tell my brother? Kind of like mouth that to Emily. And she's like, you need to tell your mom first. So I just had him call or tell my mom and my stepdad to call whenever they got in, because they were not home from work yet, I guess, probably. So they called back, and I remember my mom asked, do you want us to come down? And I didn't know how to answer, and she just, maybe it wasn't even in the first phone call, but she just insisted that they wanted to be there, be around, even if they just waited in the waiting room for the whole time. So they pretty much packed up and left immediately and drove down. It's about 12 hours.
From Indiana.
So they drove down, and they were going to pick up my sister in Greenville on the way, because it's just off of the road a little ways to get to my sister's, and they were going to come down just to be around to support us. Because we told Emily's sister, we called her as well. She lives in DC, so she was going to come. And they were flying in, Emily's mom and sister, and they weren't going to get there until like the following evening / afternoon. So my parents were going to drive overnight and be there in the morning for whatever we needed. And I didn't know what to tell them, but I am grateful that they came. It was definitely helpful, and they were able to do a few things for us because they came. That was helpful. So we called our family. We went home. We had this was 37 weeks. I don't think I said that, but this was the next day was full. Margaret was going to be full term. So this is like 36 weeks and 6 days or whatever. And so we had our hospital bags packed, but now it's like packing for a whole different scenario. So we were very like, what do we bring and what do we not bring now? And who's going to watch the dog, and where do we put a key? Because my family's coming down, just so that they could, whoever needs to get into the house. All things that we'd kind of planned, but it just was a very different twist. And I remember we both went into the nursery and cried, and just tried to get things ready, and I just remember feeling very busy, like just frantically busy. Like, we need to just, what do we have to do? All these things we have to do. We have to do this, and we have to do this. And, I could list all the things. I actually have written a lot of this stuff down, and I have talked a little bit about this in my writing, but I feel like I was looking for like a capital D, like, what do we do? Like, how do we fix this? And all of our like frantic scrambling to get together, but just kept feeling like there must be more we need to do to get it all together. And we did get it together, and we got to the hospital. Again, like, the details are foggy, maybe like 7, or I don't know.
Sometime in the evening.
Yeah, sometime in the evening. Checked in through the ER.
Was there any issues with the ER, or were they well briefed?
Nothing was said that was like horrible. I think they might have known, or I think I may be even remembering this wrong. But what I feel like I feel like I preemptively explained. I feel like maybe she had a look on her face, when you can just tell when people are about to like ask, or I don't know, just say something about the pregnancy if you're, and so I feel like maybe I said something quickly to like shut it down. And they were very like just somber, and I do think that the lady, once she found out, however that happened, maybe I didn't say anything. I don't know. I can't remember, but I feel like something happened that we like cut it off. And then she did ask if she could hug Emily, which was nice. Some people may not like that, but not that it really like fixed anything, but it was better than the alternative, I guess, of them being rude or mean or something. So, um, and they wheeled her up. They had her wheeled her up to the room.
And did they start the pregnancy process right off the bat, or?
Yeah, so this is where, well, how you were talking about earlier, the perspectives are very different with Emily and I. What I was doing as they took us, it kind of, this related to the like hiding us, like sending us out through the side room. I kind of felt, not even like negatively, but we were just in like a very back corner of the what would you call it?
Labor and delivery area?
Yeah, labor and delivery. We were like in a very back section, like last room at the end of the hall that nobody would ever come up, which is like good, but it just felt very tucked away. And I made several trips back and forth between the car and up to the room. And Emily talked to the nurses, and she, the nurses filled out the paperwork for her, and I think they took blood. But I was in and out a lot at this point, and I was like calling and texting everyone at this point. And on the way over, so I had already called my mom and my stepdad, and Emily called her parents, and I called my dad on the way over to the hospital. And so it's a little tangent, a little out of order, but I remember he tried to encourage me that maybe it wasn't like, maybe they were wrong, I guess. But anyway, so I was calling lots of people and just texting everybody, and I just wanted everybody to know, because I did not want people to be like asking me like, "Oh, was your baby born?" And at that point, I was just telling people that we had lost the baby. And so as I was making trips back and forth from the car to bring different things in, I was just calling and texting and kind of taking my time, and while Emily was doing whatever she was doing. And I do remember I was carrying in a pregnancy pillow. And I remember somebody said to me as I was walking in, like, "Oh, I know what you're here for," because they saw my pregnancy pillow, and I just kind of grinned and didn't say anything. I know they didn't know, but I do remember that. And it was just hard to.
Yeah,
no, you don't.
Just sometimes, just like you said, just grin and shuffle along.
In another instance, I think this was later, but there were some excited new grandparents, that I got on an elevator with coming up to the labor and delivery, talking about how many grandkids they had and this, that, and the other. And they never asked me why I was there or, anything. And so it was just like hard and Emily stayed in the room, but it's the labor and delivery area, I am going to guess, although it's not been my experience, is a exciting place. But it was definitely hard to be around a lot of the celebratory things that were going on as I made my way back and forth from the room over the course of the evening and the next day and the day after that. So and they gave her medicine, whatever medicine, what do they call it? To ripen her cervix, I believe.
The Pitocin or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't.
Pitocin.
I don't know.
Yeah. All I know is Pitocin does something. Because we got Pitocin.
Yeah, I don't know. This is where when Emily will read my writing, sometimes she's like, "It's called this, and you missed like this detail about this medical thing." And for me, it was just like, I'm here, and I'm just trying to be here for you, and I don't know. So I was kind of oblivious to like the medical jargon that was going on.
Yeah, I still don't know the medical jargon too, so.
Yeah.
Well, was it a long labor, or was it pretty quick?
Well, something that was weird is she was actually apparently having like contractions when she got there, but she didn't feel them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess they gave her medicine like that night at, I don't know, maybe 9 o'clock, or so we got there at 7ish. So at some point they gave her the medicine, and she was in labor all night. While I was going back and forth from the car, and I also made lesson plans for both of us because we were going to be out the next day. So that was just kind of interesting. She was in labor overnight, and then I remember at like 5. I did manage to fall asleep. That's how I deal with grief and anxiety, as I sleep. tend to. I don't have a problem with that. But I remember she at like 5:30 in the morning, she threw, I think it was her baby blanket, but it might have been a shirt. I'm not sure. She threw it at me to wake me up because I was asleep on the futon, and she said that she had thought that she had peed,
Mm-hmm.
but her water had broken. I think at like 4:30 or 5, maybe. So she called the nurse, and then the nurse came in and said, "Yeah, your water's broken." And that's when she started having like painful contractions.
Mm-hmm.
Was after that, which they say that it can get a lot more painful once the water breaks. And the nurse told her that it would be a good time to take a shower, and so I helped her into the shower, and she took a shower. And the tub was like super tall, so she had to climb up on a little
Oh.
ladder to get over the tub into the shower, and which was just kind of weird.
Mm.
And then got her back in bed, and nurses were coming in and out and checking how dilated she was. She decided it had been very like, is she gonna get an epidural or not? She decided that she would. I encouraged her to. I felt like at that point, like, why suffer any more than you have to?
Yeah.
If you can like dampen the pain, then you should. So she did ultimately decide to do that, which she had been on the fence about all of that in our like birth plan. Like if she needed it, she was going to get it, but she was maybe going to try to do without it. So I remember he came in. There was like a delay. It took him a while, but I remember just trying to like rub her shoulders and tell her like I was there. There wasn't a lot I could do except to like make her as comfortable as possible. My parents got there in the morning. Must have been at, I don't know, sometime around like 9 or 9:30, and they actually came in the room before Emily gave birth and like talked to us for a minute. Not happy things, but just
Yeah.
hugs and crying and whatnot. And then they left, and we sent them back to our house to grab some stuff that we wanted, had forgotten or whatever. Because one of the things I was doing was Googling, like, what do you do? Like, what do you do in this situation? I had no clue. And so I was just reading a lot about making memories and keeping the baby around, and just what's recommended in this situation. And so anyway, my parents came in, and then they left, and it wasn't too long after that Emily gave birth. And so she gave birth at 10:21. So I'm not sure exactly how long that labor was, but as far as like painful contractions, it was from like 4 or 5 in the morning until she gave birth at 10:21. But she was in labor for longer than that.
Yeah.
But she was like not feeling a lot of physical pain for like the night. I don't think. Now she may tell you a little differently, but I think she was feeling okay until the morning.
Were you heavily involved with the delivery? Were you asked to help out in any way, or were you?
I was there, and I was standing on one side of the bed, and I held her hand and was just like coaching her, I guess, just
Mm-hmm.
encouraging her, rubbing her head. I had not, when I pictured pregnancy or like birth, I'd always thought that I really thought there was going to be like a curtain between like the top half and the bottom half. And so I'd always joke that like her and the doctors would deal with the bottom half, like typical
Yeah.
cliche, jokes. But there was not a curtain, and I did not really do anything other than one thing I'll say. It seemed like the doctor showed up at the last minute. I could see Maggie coming out, like, and the doctor wasn't in there. I could see her head coming out, and she was coming in like, as her head was coming out, she was like putting on her coat and getting all the things together. And I remember just being like, I don't know, it was just crazy. And by the time Emily gave birth, like it went easily.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't involved, except that I did not anticipate like watching it, but I guess at that point I just felt like I needed to like soak up all the experiences. So I actually watched Maggie be born. I think I was the only thing that I could think, and a lot of people as I would talk to them, is it must have been a cord accident because there were no indications that anything was wrong ever.
Yeah.
And the only thing I could think of was it had to be a cord. And And I think I was watching for that too. I mean, I wanted to see it, and I wanted to see, like, was there a cord wrapped around her neck when she came out? And there was. I saw them like unwrap the cord, and they had asked us what we wanted to do, whether we wanted Maggie to be cleaned up before they gave her to Emily, or I mean, I suppose some people maybe don't even want the baby necessarily. I don't know what everybody else does, but we decided that we did not want her to be washed, just like wrapped in a blanket and passed to Emily as soon as she could be. And so that's what they did. I watched her be born, and then they put Maggie on Emily's chest, and she held her. And I had the presence of mind to take some pictures of Emily and Maggie together, which I think Emily likes them, but they're so sad to look at because Emily is obviously devastated and crying and trying to smile.
It's hard to smile in that situation.
Yeah. So, so Emily held her, and then she, at some point, passed her to me, and I held her, and Emily took some pictures. And I remember taking pictures; just seemed so morbid, but that's what I had read and all these things. It felt very like I just had this image of like black and white Victorian photos of a baby that had died, and it just seemed so morbid at the time. But that's what everything said to do, was take pictures and just do all these things to make memories. And so we were trying to do that. And so I was involved in the sense that I was there, and I watched it, and I watched Emily hold Maggie for the first time, and I got to hold her. And I remember I took her and sat her down, and it's like all the things that you hear about with pregnancy, like, or childbirth, like you're going to fall in love with your daughter, or your kid. The first time you see him is just going to be this like earth-shattering experience. I mean, I just felt like I loved her so much in a way that before I'd seen her, I loved her and I loved the idea of her, but I mean, there's like a weird kind of like bittersweet joy in thinking about it now, because she just looks so beautiful, and like rubbing her cheeks, and it's sad to me now, especially because at least then I could hold her body, which she had already passed on, obviously. But I don't know, kind of lost my train of thought there. But
it's okay. Did you have her name picked out before you guys got to the hospital, or just like?
Yeah, we did.
You always knew her name was going to be Margaret, or?
I think we decided pretty like around 6 months maybe, after Christmas. We'd tossed around a bunch of names. We had a boy's name picked out, like, that we knew we wanted.
Just in case.
She wasn't a boy. Say what?
Just in case if it's a boy.
Well, just early on, we were like, if it's a boy, we're going to name him this. Yeah. And we knew that. We did not have a girl name that we were as sure about. It took us a lot of discussion. And so Emily eventually wanted to name her Margaret. That is her great-grandma. And Bernice is her grandma. And so she liked those names. At first, I did not like love them, either of them. Mm-hmm. But I really was like, okay, if she's Margaret, we can call her Maggie. And I really liked Maggie. So that helped settle it. And so at some point, we decided Margaret Bernice, and the name grew on me, and I loved the name Maggie. And we also had a nickname. We always talked, she's going to be noisy. She's going to cry a lot. And so we called her our magpie. That's what we would call her. Because, like a noisy bird.
Yeah, good old magpie.
So she's our little magpie.
And so, did she look like a Maggie? Did she look like a Margaret to you? You had the name, and she came out, and you said yes.
Yeah, she was Maggie. She was Margaret.
Or you didn't. You're like, she could be a Bernice. We could call her by her middle name.
No, people since then, somebody called her Maggie B, and I liked that. That was something that came about afterwards, though. Somebody asked about Maggie B. I don't know what they asked or who said it, but but that was something I never thought of until after we had lost her. So.
How long were you guys in the hospital after Margaret was born?
We were there we had her for 26 hours, and we left very soon after we sent her away.
Were you guys, when we were in the hospital, we had what was called a cuddle cot, which was just like
Hmm.
a cooled crib.
Yeah.
Um, did you guys have a cuddle cot, or how were you guys situated?
Yeah, we did have a cuddle cot, and I remember them telling us we were gonna have a cuddle cot, and we'd have as much time with her as we wanted, and I didn't know what a cuddle cot was. Um, but it's like the cooling pad, and so she would lay on that. We'd put her on it, and it'd keep her cool, so to preserve her body longer. And that was really a difficult thing. Like, when do you say goodbye?
Yeah. Oh,
I hated being in the hospital. Like, I was just, it's still back to the like felt like I needed to do something. There was like that day. I mean, we did a bunch of things to try and like commemorate or I don't know, make memories.
mm-hmm.
I remember I spent like an hour and a half working on basically a shrine, I guess. I don't know what you'd call it exactly, but with like her baby book that we had gotten her footprints put in and the flowers that people had sent. And I'm not a photographer, but I just wanted to get like the perfect picture of all these things. And I just like was just kind of going stir crazy being in there. But at the same time, leaving meant we were going to have to say goodbye. And that was just a difficult decision that we kind of wavered back and forth about until we finally like figured out how we were going to do it.
And were you guys open to just family coming and visiting you and Margaret, or did friends and neighbors and other people come? Or how did
We
you?
did not. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, how did you deal with visitors or visitations?
My mom and my stepdad and my sister were there. They'd driven overnight. And so at some point after Emily had given birth, they came in like mid morning. And I think they went and got us food after that and like were running errands for us. So they all held her for a little bit, but they were mostly out of the room. I felt I think there was like this protective sense that I felt, which,
Yeah.
rationally, I don't know that it makes sense, but not that I didn't want them around. It just felt so intimate and crazy and just, I don't know. But I'm glad that they came in and they got to hold her. They offered to have a chaplain come talk to us. So I remember he came, I think, before we gave birth or maybe right after. And he came back later and with just Emily and I. And he, we had Maggie baptized. Uh, we had her baptized. I wanted to make sure that my dad got to see her, so I thought to FaceTime him, and so he got to see her, and that was important. And I'm glad I did that.
Well, that's good.
Um, which I'm glad we did. I don't know the ins and outs of baptism, and she'd already passed on, but it
Yeah.
just felt like any ritual, any ceremony that we could do with her, or just to help say goodbye, we were for it, and he prayed with us. And then Emily's sister got there in the afternoon at some point, and so she visited, and then her mom got there, and they held Maggie as well and hung out with us for a little bit, not super long. We also had, you may know, I think it's Lay Me Down to Sleep, the Lay Me Down to Sleep
Yeah.
Foundation, or I'm not sure if that's the exact title, but they take pictures, they do like professional photography for babies that
Yeah.
have been lost, and so a lady came at one point and took pictures.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it was nice. That was well, not one of the hardest things. I really struggled with that because it was nice getting the pictures, and we like we had put clothes to do photos as we were in the hospital, like to just have nice pictures of
Mm-hmm.
us that were matching. All our clothes had purple. Emily had spent a lot of time picking out like the swaddle that she thought would be the cutest, and I mean we'd picked them out together, but I'm not as into those kinds of things as she is. And it was hard though because I remember they we had a onesie that she was gonna wear or something, and so the photographer was like, "Do you want different outfits?" I think is how it came about. And
Yeah.
Emily wanted to get a picture of her in like another onesie, and so we unswaddled her, and her skin on her hand was like tearing, at that point.
Yeah.
Because I mean, yeah, and I like rushed the photos. I was like, this is too much. It's too hard to see her like because you're changing poses, and it's just like I don't need to go into all of it, but it was a struggle for me with the photos. And now I wish almost that we had more photos. I'm very happy with the ones that we have. Like, I'm glad that we did that, but I was a mess through that process.
And the sad thing is, hindsight is 2020. Like, yeah,
mm-hmm.
it really is hard to have those photos, and it as they're posing your child, my child, as they're posing them. It's a reminder that that you're not ever going to have more photos, and it's a bittersweet and sorrowful thing. So I don't blame you at all for rushing it. It's hard.
Yeah. And along those lines too, we'd had this baby book that we got, and it was all these milestones, and we had never even opened it to do any of it. It was, you're supposed to write a letter before you met her, and we hadn't written it until we knew that she was already passed. And so we wrote a letter. Like, this was the day before, I guess. But and then it was just all these, like, first birthday, flipping through. It was like a form of torture to look through it. But at that point in time, it's just, you're just dealing with all these things and these emotions, and you just, there are all these things that you've been looking forward to, and they're just not going to happen. So
tell us about handing your daughter over to the hospital for the last time. How did you guys determine when to or how to? Tell us about that situation.
So the night that she was born, I walked Emily's mom and sister out to our car. They're going to drive our car and go stay at our house. And her mom and sister, not out of any kind of, like, people just don't know. I mean, and I can't blame anybody, because I didn't know in that situation. I was just winging it. But they were like saying that it'd probably be good to say goodbye tonight, to, before we go to bed, send her out, so that in the morning it just would be like a fresh start, I guess, which sounds so nonsensical, and like, what were they thinking? But they weren't, like, they were trying to be helpful, and just thought that having her in there was this, like, morbid reminder, I guess. But anyway, Emily was not having that at all. And I kind of tried to, like, suggest it, because I didn't know. I was taking people's advice and reading articles and trying to just, like, do the best I could. And she just didn't want to. And so I didn't, like, push, because, like, if she doesn't want to, she doesn't want to. And I didn't know what to do. And so we went to bed that night. And at some point in the night, Emily woke me up, and she was just wailing. And it was, like, terrifying and sad. And the nurse all the way down the hall came running in, and, we worked to calm her down. And and so we had this moment. I mean, this is one of the most special moments. And like a cathartic moment. We took her over to the futon where I was sleeping, and both of us laid down and laid Maggie down between us, and we just talked to her, and, and to each other, but to her, directed at her. That we were sorry, and we missed her, and that she had all these family members that were so excited to meet her, and a dog brother, and just basically just went through everything that we had envisioned for her life, and our life together. And it just felt really good. I mean, sad, terribly sad, but just, cathartic. To have this moment where we could speak all our dreams, and this is at like 3 a.m. or something, early morning, late at night, early morning, whatever. And after that, I was like, okay, this feels like a good time to say goodbye. And Emily was like, okay, I can, like, we kissed her, and, all this stuff. And Emily was about to call the nurse, and I had a complete reversal, just, like, gut reaction. I was like, no, not yet, because the thought of being in the hospital room without her just seemed as equally horrible as being in there, with her, I guess. And, I mean, it was, I don't know, I mean, it was good having her around, but you probably get what I'm saying. It's just, like, hard to say goodbye, but also hard. Just the whole thing's hard. There's nothing easy about it. So we kept her, and we spent the next morning just really putting together how we were going to say goodbye, deciding on. We didn't want to have a. Didn't really want to have a funeral. It just felt too intimate, I guess. We decided on cremation, which that was one of those decisions that we had to make early, like before she was even born. Like, do you want to do a funeral or a cremation? But we said cremation, and so we were just gonna have our own ceremony. So we did. We spent the day holding her, and we picked out. We decided we'd read her a book before, as we said goodbye. And we talked with our nurse. Our nurses were really great and helpful and listened to us and did things the way we wanted. So we got a photo, like a Polaroid photo of the three of us, because we just felt like sending her away without us was too much. So we got a photo of the three of us together, me and Emily and Maggie, and put that, because we were told that we could have her cremated with objects. So we were just trying to come up with that kind of thing. And we read her a book and we sent it with her. It was called To the Moon and Back, or I believe. And that was like the song while she was pregnant that we would sing to her. And she would like kick when we would sing it a lot of times and stuff. So we read that book and prayed, and we each had written her a letter. I don't know what order we did all those things, but we just had our own little goodbye ceremony. And then once we were ready, we called the nurse, and like I said, our nurse was great, and we told her that we wanted to have some time to say goodbye and that we wanted to leave pretty soon after that. So they made sure that everything was in line so that pretty much we could walk out the door very soon after that happened. And so we said goodbye, and then the nurse came and took her out, and we were very concerned about where she was going to go, like from there, before she went to the funeral service place. And the nurse brought us back. She was wrapped in a swaddle for most of the time, so the nurse brought us back the swaddle that she had been wrapped in. I didn't really want to take it off again and just see like the tears or the visible things. So it was hard. I'm very glad that I'm glad that we had a ceremony, I guess, even though it was just Emily and I. That was very significant to me and helped. I mean, I don't know, it's hard to say anything helps because nothing fixes the situation, but it just, for our grieving, I guess, I look back and I am thankful that we had the presence of mind to do that.
With the cremation, did you get Margaret's ashes back pretty quickly, or did you have to wait a couple days, or?
We got them back exactly a week later, and it was the day after Emily's mom and sister had left, and we were off of work, and this is just kind of a funny little side note. We had decided to go hiking nearby, just to get outside and get in nature, hoping for some healing, some exercise, and so we were hiking, and we had entered the radio contest will come on and say text this number and you might win $1,000, and so it was like this little moment where we were out in the woods, and we had you're always sad in the moments after this, but you have these weird moments where like things feel okay and kind of normal, and I was coming out of the woods, and I had taken my phone because I was like, well, if we get this call, I want to win $1,000. I don't want to leave my phone. And so there was this unknown number calling with our local area code, and I was like, oh, I think we won the money. And then it was them calling about the ashes, so that we could come pick them up. So we left the woods and went to this funeral home, and there wasn't like a service going on, but there were some people like gathering, and we were of course in like sweaty clothes and like dirty from walking through the trail, and we walked in, picked up her ashes like immediately, and we kind of just were like, sorry, we look so raggedy, but we just felt like we needed to get them like right then.
And what have you done with her ashes?
They are on a bookshelf on the wall at the foot of our bed. So there's just a shelf, and it's like one of the higher shelves, and there's some things up there. We have a couple pictures of her, and some frames that people got us. There's a pillow that her mom made for Maggie. Emily's mom made for Maggie. So they're just in our room.
Beautiful little family.
Yeah.
Anything else you would like to tell us about the birth of Margaret, or?
I guess just for me, the thing that I struggle with sometimes, and I guess would like to say, is just, I think it was a real struggle to this like question of like, am I really a dad after all of this? And I don't know if everybody feels that. It just, you feel like you've been robbed of something. And like it to other people, it doesn't count. And Emily always tells me, like not to worry about that or whatever. And I feel like a dad. I feel like I love Maggie like a dad. I've tried to like think a lot about the pregnancy a lot, and just how she would kick, and I feel that. So I don't know. That's the only other thought that I guess I would say. I just try and think about all the things and just reaffirm that, like, I don't know. I love her, and she has changed my life, and that's what kids do. So
that's true. That is true. Well, thank you so much, Dustin. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to thank Dustin again for coming on the podcast, and also for being vulnerable and sharing the story of his daughter, Margaret, with us. Head over to our website, stillapartofus.com. There you can find the show notes, including a full transcription of this interview and any resources that were mentioned. You could sign up for our short and helpful email newsletter. You could learn how you could become a patron and support the work it takes to produce this show for just a few dollars a month. And lastly, you can find out how to get in touch with us if you would like to share your child's story on the show. The show was produced and edited by Winter and Lee Red. Thanks to Josh Woodward for letting us use his song, She Dreams in Blue. You can find him at joshwoodward.com. Lastly, subscribe to this podcast and share it with a friend that might need it, and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they are still a part of us. I'm writing a book. I've got the page numbers done. Stephen Wright.